Okay, so we have to do this in one take. One take. All right, so I'm going to do my infamous demonstration on the pleural membranes. That's where we're going to start. So we have to pretend a lot. So this is our chest cavity. This bucket is our chest cavity. And in the chest cavity, we have two lungs, okay? So the one lung, they're both the same. It has on the surface of the lung, tightly adhered to the lung, very tightly adhered, okay? You would tear the lung trying to get this off. This is the visceral pleura. The visceral pleura is on the lung, okay? So I'm gonna wrap up the other lung. So here's the other lung. And here I'm gonna put some visceral pleura on it. Visceral pleura, okay? So that's fixed, it's coating, it's covering the lung. Visceral pleura. And then while we're at it, I'm going to pull out the heart. Here we have the heart, okay? And so I'm holding the epicardium. And then the next layer in is the myocardium, and the next layer in is the endocardium, but this is the heart. And so I'm going to put the heart in a pericardial sac. Okay, I've put the heart in the pericardial sac, and in this pericardial sac we have pericardial fluid that keeps the heart from adhering to the pericardial sac. So that's called pericardial fluid. Pericardial fluid. Now, the last thing, we have one more membrane because I have one more bag, okay? So now we have, I'm going to empty the chest cavity. It's now empty, there's nothing in it. And I'm going to put the parietal pleura, of course it's not going to fit. I should have checked this out ahead of time. Okay, so, okay, we'll just pretend it's fitting, okay? So the parietal pleura lines the chest cavity. The parietal pleura lines the chest cavity. So now that we have the parietal pleura lining the chest cavity, we're going to put the heart in the chest cavity. We're going to put the lungs in the chest cavity on either side of the heart. Okay, and so I'm going to get all these bags in my one hand. Okay. All right, so in the chest cavity we have pleural fluid. Pleural fluid. So from the superficial to deep, we have the skin, we have the chest wall, then we have the parietal pleura, then we would have pleural fluid, then we would have the visceral pleura on the lungs. Remember, we have the pericardial sac around the heart with the pericardial fluid. And then dividing the two chest cavities, where all these visceral membranes come together. And so I'm just going to take this out in one piece here. Okay, that's the mediastinum, all those tissues that are reflecting on each other. That's going to divide between the chest cavities, like right about here. And so that's what we call the mediastinum. And we would have the thymus sitting in the mediastinum. Okay, so that's the chest cavity. So now we just move to the abdomen, the abdominal cavity. So let's say we've gutted an elk that we've been hunting and killed an elk, and we're gonna gut it, take all the viscera out, okay? All right, so now our chest cavity becomes the abdominal cavity, and now we're looking at the parietal peritoneum. The theme is the same. The parietal peritoneum, we have peritoneal fluid in this cavity to keep the guts from sticking to the body wall, okay? And then we would have the intestine hanging from basically the abdominal side or the ventral side of the back. So we'd have the skin, the vertebrae, and then we would have the parietal peritoneum, and then the mesentery that suspends the intestine and the other organs. This would be the mesentery, and then covering the liver and the stomach and the intestines and the bladder and all that. That would be our visceral peritoneum. Visceral peritoneum. So if I were to put this, let's say this is, what are we going to make this? The spleen. Okay, this is the spleen. And so this is visceral peritoneum. I'm going to put it in the abdomen. It's going to be bathed with peritoneal fluid. Remember, this is the, I just don't want to screw it up here. And so we'll get the parietal peritoneum, okay? And we have the peritoneal fluid. And remember, we mentioned that the kidneys were what we call retroperitoneal. And so we're gonna make our heart into a kidney, okay? And so maybe it's a good thing this bag didn't fit the bucket. So I'm gonna put the kidney in here. So it's not in the bag, it's in the bucket, but it's not in the bag, okay? And so if we were to look in the abdomen, the kidney is what we call retroperitoneal. It's not in the peritoneal cavity. It's actually right under the lumbar muscles. And so the kidney would be retroperitoneal, because I'm going to get the kidney out now. I'm reaching below the muscles, and here's our kidney. So that's what we mean by retroperitoneal. So the kidney would not have any peritoneal fluid on it because it's not in the peritoneal cavity, in the abdominal cavity. So I'm going to just review the abdomen here. We have the spleen covered with visceral peritoneum. It's in the abdominal cavity. It's covered with peritoneal fluid. We have the parietal peritoneum, and then our little kidneys hiding in here. It is retroperitoneal. Retroperitoneal. It's not in the abdominal cavity. Okay, and then in the chest, my phone is slowly drifting. Let me just perk it up here a little bit. Okay, so the in the chest, we'll just review. We'll just do it with the words, okay? So in the chest, lining the chest cavity, we have the parietal pleura, we have pleural fluid, and then on the organs, the lungs, we're gonna have the visceral pleura. The heart is gonna be in the pericardial sac.